Hello, I'm Drake. Welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we talk about real occult and magical knowledge so that you can manifest real, tangible change and results in your life. This week we're going to be talking about how to astral travel, so stay tuned. And if you like this kind of information and knowledge, be sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about astral projection. This is a question I've been getting a lot, and a lot of people are really interested in how they can start working to develop this skill and add it to their practice. Honestly, I love astral projection. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I personally think it's the best way to get some of the best personal gnosis you can get, because instead of just reading in a book, you can actually go out into the world and into the planes and interact with these planes directly, and thus learning from direct involvement. So today we're going to cover two forms of astral projection. And both of these I consider to be hands down the easiest ways to start practicing, and in some ways I even consider them the same technique. It's just some people have two different viewpoints on what's happening here. The first one is you literally just take your consciousness out of your body. The second method, you would actually create a thought form and construct a duplicate of you and then move your consciousness to that. However, in the end, the goal and the results end up being the same. So, let's get started. First off, let's just talk about getting your consciousness out of your body. For years when I was trying to learn astral projection, the hardest part for me was getting out of my body. I'd read book after book after book after book on the subject. I'd heard many people talk about it. Most people talk about just slipping into astral projection in a dream, and I get that, I understand that, that's fine. But for me, I wanted to be able to control it. I wanted to be able to do it at will, and that's the reason I was studying so heavily into it. And I'd also heard that the sensation was different than your general trance work. And after all these years, I have to agree with them, it is different. But I could not consciously get out of my body, no matter how hard I tried. And perhaps the most common method I had heard was imagine a rope over your body, and that you're climbing this rope, but you're not moving your body. Your energetic body's climbing this rope and pulling you up. And as much as I would pull and pull and pull and pull, I never got out of my body. I kept trying to move out of my body, and I could not get out of my body. Then I read a passage that kind of struck me, and they said astral projection is about focus. And your consciousness follows your focus. Whatever you're focused on is where your consciousness is. And I got to thinking about that. You're not thinking about your body when you're dreaming. Your body has no tangible reality to your dream. And when you're trying to pull yourself out of your body, ultimately the focus is your body. Much like getting out of a car, you have to kind of focus on the car to get out of it. So I asked myself, what would happen if I eliminated my body from the equation? Well, I'll tell you what happened. I got into a nice meditative trance, or deep meditative state, and I had my eyes closed, and I started with a room I was real familiar with, and I would visualize myself standing in the room at a location where I was currently not. So it was actually, in my case, it was across the room. And in fact, at that particular time, all the way across the room, I actually had this drinking horn. So next thing I knew, visually, I was standing right next to that drinking horn. I could look down and see it. My focus was now on that drinking horn and where I was standing. My consciousness had followed my thought. The moment I thought of my body, I snapped straight back into it. I was right back where I was sitting, and I repeated the process. And I would immediately snap back to that location. Now for the second method, where we're talking about transferring your consciousness into a energetic body duplicate, the process would be the same. You essentially create the duplicate somewhere in the room with you, and then you focus on the duplicate, and you would focus on looking through its eyes. So ultimately you end up with the same process because your focus is no longer on your body. You're moving your consciousness over to that duplicate. And some people find that visualization process just makes it easier. For me, I really don't have the patience to do all the visualization and construction of the duplicate, so I tend to just focus on where I want to jump to. And honestly, that's what I would do. And I even started testing it because, okay, first thing you're going to say is, Drake, well, all you're doing is visualizing a spot you recognize. It's all in your head. I agree with you. That was my question. So I wanted to know very simply how I could test that. So the obvious answer for me was to start pushing and see how far I can go and where I can explore and how I can confirm it. So I started thinking about what is something that I'm familiar enough with that I can utilize, but I have no control over the environment, so it's constantly changing. But at the same time, though it's constantly changing, I still have time to confirm what I saw. And at the time, our neighborhood was very busy. So cars coming in and out constantly, moving around all different spots. I figured my mailbox was far enough away from my house, it was a good, 500 feet or so, that there's plenty of details between the span of my house and that mailbox that would change very rapidly, very readily. And I had not left the house that day. So I started projecting to the mailbox. And it took a little trouble, it took a little focus, it was hard. And I quickly found out, when you do this, the second you get to the location, pick an object, focus on it, use that as a mental anchor. Because astral projection is all about maintaining your concentration and your focus. And that's hard. A lot of people's minds will drift and wander off. And as that happens, the projection is going to weaken, or you're just going to snap back to your body. But if every time you're someplace you focus on something, while you're focusing on that thing, while you're holding its information in your head, it anchors you to that spot to prevent you from snapping back. That immensely helped me when I figured that out. So I'll go ahead and throw that in here and save you the trouble. So my focus at that moment was on the mailbox. And I kept my focus on the mailbox, and I would slowly turn around because our mailbox was at a three-way crossroad. You had the main road coming this way, and you had our street coming this way, and the mailbox was right here on the corner. So there's lots of driveways, lots of houses, plenty of stuff that can change and move around. And as I was viewing it, I happened to notice an old, and I do mean old, blue, like powder blue Ford pickup. Never seen this thing in my life. Honestly, it looked like something where I grew up, and I seriously thought I was seeing things. There's no way this thing belonged in that neighborhood. I took this as an opportunity. There's no way that truck is in my neighborhood. I've never seen it. And it stands out like a sore thumb. So I now shifted my focus from the mailbox to this blue Ford, which was parked beside the mailboxes. And I went over to that truck and I examined it, every detail. I wanted to see patches of rust. I wanted to see what was in the bed of the truck. I wanted to see if it had any particular things hanging from the mirrors. And I even checked the license plate to get a license plate number. Now, once I got all that information and data, that's when I proceeded to attempt to walk back to the house. Now notice I said house, because if I'm walking back to the house, my focus still ain't on my body, and that's important. And I say that because as soon as I got near the house, I actually started to wonder if I would be able to see my body once I walked in. And as soon as I thought that thought, bang, I was back in my body. Well, long story short, or shorter, I walked outside, and sure enough, everything I had saw while I was out there was there, including that blue truck, with every detail I had seen. The same license plate, the same insurance stickers, everything, every detail perfect was in there. Now, like I said, the second technique, you would be doing the same thing. The only difference is you're going to construct that duplicate of you first, and then once you have all the details filled in and it feels real to you, and in my opinion, that's probably the hardest part of the that's the hardest part of that second technique. You really have to get it tangible so that it feels real to you, so that when you can focus on it, it allows that transfer. There's something about having a tangible thing that feels real to you for that technique that really helps. So my advice is I would actually try just projecting your consciousness first and see if you can do that, because honestly, I don't want to use the word shortcuts because I don't really believe there are any real shortcuts in the occult, but this actually trains you in all the skills that are necessary, and it does cut out the extra visualization. However, if you try this for a few days and you're having trouble, go ahead and shift over and try the energy construct version of it. And like I said, just duplicate yourself in energy, construct it as you want. You can even change your appearance. Just make sure the construct looks and feels real to you. And then use that as your focus to move your consciousness. In the first technique, you're doing the same thing, only instead of moving your consciousness into something, you're moving your consciousness beside something. And it's a tangible object that's in the real world, so it's a little easier because you're not trying to do two things at once. Now, we keep talking about these focused objects. Well, those are important as you're traveling because you can pop around and visit places. I've visited the pyramids, I've visited the Grand Canyon, I've visited friends. Any place that you can visit by putting your focus on it. And the moment you're there, you want to find something tangible enough to lock into your mind to hold you there. It's just a mental anchor. And even when you're traveling in the planes, once you get skilled enough that you're able to maintain the projection long enough and reliably, that's when you start working with the planes. And working with the planes is a slightly different video. But even on those planes, you want to find something that you're viewing to lock onto, whether it be a rock, a tree, whatever it might be that's on that landscape, even if it's just a lake. You want to lock that in so that you have that anchor to hold you there. Now, if you are working with an entity or something, you can actually use the entity as the anchor because your focus is on them. The big kicker with that one that I found is you got to be careful because sometimes those entities will bolt, and if you're linked and anchored to them, they're going to bolt with you attached. Loki loves to do that one to me a lot. He'll take off and just drag me anywhere and everywhere. So for that reason, I don't generally like to use entities as a focus, but you can. One of my favorite ways to do this is to use a friend or loved one as my focus, so I'll just jump my consciousness straight to them, and I can check on them, see how they're doing, and all that. And some of them who have already trained their astral senses, they can usually pick up on my presence and even see me. But again, I can't reiterate. Thinking and focusing on getting out of your body is the biggest obstacle because that puts your focus on your body. So contrary to a lot of the advice you may have heard in the past, I am going to tell you, don't focus on getting out of your body. Just visualize yourself at a location in the room that's away from where you currently are. Like right now in my office as I film this, my computer is across the room that way from my bookcase. Well, that's, I don't know what, 8 to 10 feet. So I would actually set it up so that that 8 to 10 feet is where I would picture myself standing. And I would pick an object on my desk as my focus and anchor, not just the position, but I'd actually pick that, which at this time I have a coffee cup over there, and that's probably what I'd pick. And that would be the focus for me to jump to that location while viewing the coffee cup. Now what that does is that actually has you jump to the location, and it automatically puts your senses on whatever your focus is on, naturally creating that anchor. So you're instantly there and that anchor's created. Now it really is that simple, and it does take practice. It's a simple process, but maintaining your focus and concentration, that's the hard part, and it takes practice. So as someone who views magic from a scientific principle, how do you practice this and how do you test it? Well, first off, as always, I'm going to say, get your journal. You're going to want to take notes. Secondly, you are going to actually want to apply yourself to move around your house first. That's the easiest way to start this. Start moving around the room you're in. Start moving around your house. Locations that you're familiar with. If you have a friend, have them move a few objects in your house while you're in your bedroom and see if you can find the objects that they've moved, which the objects should be positioned in a very obvious area. They shouldn't be hiding them. But then you would actually use your astral projection and you would move around your house and you would see how many of these little things that you could find and identify, and the more of them you find, the better you're doing. But that's not necessary. That's a nice little perk if you can do it. It's a great way to start testing how accurate the projection is. However, when you're just starting out and moving around your house, your primary concern and focus at that point is just learning to move around. So you would move from focus point to focus point with your anchors and just get into the natural habit of every time you move into a new location, you find an anchor. So, for example, if I left this room and I went to the ritual room down the hall, my ritual circle might actually be one of the things I choose as my anchor. So as soon as I walked in, my focus would go to that. And anytime you want to examine something, your focus can shift to that. So you're constantly anchoring yourself to it. Almost think about it like you don't want to float away, so you're constantly rehooking your anchor or climbing a mountain. You have always got to have that point of contact. And just developing that habit, that's the big focus of when you're starting to move around your house. Now, once you've got the movement down, that's where, in my opinion, that's where it gets fun, because now you leave the house and you go to locations you're familiar with that are farther away, but you could still go and examine and see how accurate what you're seeing was. For example, like I did, started moving around my neighborhood, and I did it in an instant jump to the mailbox, which was a location I knew. After that, I went to a local park. I didn't go physically. I would jump to that local park, and I would try and find something out of place at the park, whether it be trash, some cans, whatever it might be, even tree branches down. And then I would actually drive out to the park, because it was 20 minutes from my house, and I'd see if those items were there. And I would view the landscape and see how accurate the landscape looked compared to what I saw at the time when I was there through astral projection. Other ways you can do this is to project to places where people you know are, and you do want to respect privacy when you're doing this, so you can view and evaluate the surroundings, and if they know you're working on this, you can give them a call and ask them, hey, I astral projected here and I saw this, this, and this, would this be accurate? And they can give you feedback. And of course, you can always just visit places that you can find, like the Great Pyramids. If you know the location and you can visualize it, you can jump to it. So once you've developed the skill, if you've never visited the Great Pyramids, all you would need to do is enter your trance state, focus on the Great Pyramids, and your consciousness will just jump straight to the Great Pyramids, and you can begin to look around and explore. Now, I know this is a massive topic to try and condense and crunch down into a video, and I hope I did a good job. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. Let me know. I'll answer it as quick as I can. I'm pretty good about getting back at your all's comments. We do actually have a Q&A coming up, because I have a lot of questions that have been coming in my email, and I'd like to do a video on answering a bunch of them. But real quick, just to condense down what you need to do. Sit comfortably. Get all the wiggles out. Get into a meditative state. While in a meditative state, focus on a location and an object and visualize it as if you're standing beside it and looking at it. This will jump your consciousness out of your body. And once you're there, try to avoid the surprise. First time, the surprise of being there might jolt you back. That's okay, don't worry about it. But once you can reach there and not get jolted back by surprise, then just start moving around. And everything you do will follow thought, just like in real life. You don't have to say to yourself, I'm moving my hand. You just move your hand. It's instinctual. You think about wanting to reach and grab something, and you do. So movement in the astral is pretty much the same thing. The only difference is you aren't limited by the physical. So if you wish to move up and fly, you can. You can move quicker. You're not limited to ground travel. So if you don't want to just, teleport or instantly appear next to something farther away, you could actually fly there if you know the direction of it. So go ahead, give this a try, and start adding astral projection to your practice. And go ahead and hit the subscribe button and like the video and drop us a comment below. It helps the channel out greatly. And while you're here, go ahead and check out some of our other videos. We got a lot more coming. In fact, Friday we have another Kitchen Witch Urban Magic video coming. I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. I'll see you next time.